we've got a presenter here that's really very overconfident. You know, Dave Maffei says that he's done this, and this is a piece of cake, and he can do this 10 times a day. So, no. But what we're doing is modeling, so I've been, doing what I've been told not to do over and over. I'm touching. But yes, we don't do that.
That's from John Stigner's lab.
Okay.
He doesn't know it's missing.
Now he does. Now he knows. So without any further ado, the road. Oh no, that's the right. The road to Run 8 weathering. Oh, what a nice time. Did you think of that?
It's like the Bob Hope crossing, right?
I think so.
I'm old, not that old.
Well, both of us. So, all right, everybody, welcome Dave Maffei.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for coming. If you're here for the RPM meet, I hope you're enjoying it. I just been voluntold about me being the RPM person now, maybe for Reno. Maybe because I got the most junk on the table over there, right? But, so if you don't know anything about an RPM meet, Railroad Prototype Modelers, it's basically where you get together with a bunch of modelers, you set up your stuff, whether it's finished or not, and you talk about it. You talk about how you did it, how you're in the process of doing it, and just kind of share information amongst other modelers. It's a real good venue. It's not a contest. I've been doing the Bay Area Prototype Modelers for a few years. If you've been to that, it's a real good example of what it's supposed to be. And that's where you just bring your models and you display them. It's not a show-off kind of thing. Oh my God, I really got to talk loud here. Anyway, so if you have models to bring the next year at Reno, I would really appreciate that, since I'm going to be the person organizing it, I guess. Or it's just basically putting out the invitation and saying, hey, look, bring your models, and we'll set them up on a table like we did out there, and we'll talk about the models and amongst each other and the processes that you're using, and just basically show off your work and talk about model railroad. So anyway, so let's talk about me for 30 seconds. My last name is Maffei. That's the Italian pronunciation. So according to Bob Zink, we were just talking about it earlier, Maffei is the locomotive that I'm not related to. Okay, don't throw any stones. The Italians were the ones that didn't invent the locomotive. So in Italy, I was just there about a month ago, and Maffei is like a Smith or Jones over there. There's a lot of Maffeis in Italy, and especially in Tuscany. Anyway, my late father, Frank Maffei, did an article on the Ocean View Line in issue 82. If you've seen that issue, his passion was in the Southern Pacific Ocean View Line and the Ocean Shore Railroad, and that's how I grew up liking trains, right? Railroad archaeology trip. Come on, we're going to see where the line on the NWP was at Point Reyes, right? And that's what I did as a kid for fun. Not Disneyland, right? We went to Point Reyes. So. Anyway, so I'm about ready to retire. I've got 40 years with the world famous utility that does all the commercials that you see. I take care of their, my gig is taking care of their blue trucks. 10 years now as an administrator, so I don't have to hurt myself like I did for the first 30 years. But working on equipment, you realize how it gets dirty and how it looks after it gets worn. So my study today is going to be about weathering on Southern Pacific locomotives. We're going to start the presentation with a look at some of my first Run 8 weathering, which is basically what the SP locomotives look like after running in the mountains of the Cascades, Donner Pass, and of course down here in the Tehachapi's. So these locomotives back in the 70s that I model, I've been modeling the 70s since the 70s. So these locomotives back in those days that Joe just talked about, there was no exhaust scrubbers. There's a lot of soot and a lot of sanding. Locomotives, I was talking to a few engineers, they would turn the sanders on and leave them on all the way up the hill, and you would get that nice patina of white sanding dust on the bottom. And that's what I wanted to model. So that's what was the driving force about getting my models to look like I remember them on the mountain. My experience with the railroad on the mountain was mostly on Donner Pass. I was lucky enough to go up on Donner Pass and see the Northern operator, Shorty Teal, sit with him at night, handing out orders, watching a big freight going eastbound. That's a neat ticket. If you didn't live to see that or never heard a freight train coming into Northern and Run 8, that's a baptism right there. Especially when you got an old timer like Shorty sitting next to you with the orders hooked up. That's what Run 8 weathering is all about. So, anyway, so today we're gonna have a lot of fun. There's no test at the end, but in automotive training 45 years ago at Skyline College in San Bruno, what they did was a half day of book work, and you learn about all the theory of automotive stuff, and the other half of the day was lab work. Where do you think you learned the most stuff? Right? Where the rubber hit the road and you're down there pulling the tires off, looking at the brakes, looking at the transmission. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start off taking a look at some of the models that I started with Run 8 weathering on a couple of scale trains, SD45s. Then we're going to jump into all the products I use. It's a personal thing for me. This is my method of doing weathering. The hardest thing about weathering is getting started, right? Finding the time. Because you have a $50 boxcar now, you don't want to mess it up, right? But I'm going to try to take that fear away. And if you can just take a few things or a few ideas away from the presentation today, that'd be great. So, but going back to today's what we're doing, we're going to look at the Run 8 weathering I did on a few scale train models. We're going to go into the products that I'm using. At the end, we're going to go through the article. Did anybody read the article? Did they just put it at the bottom of the birdcage? Vic did. Bottom of the birdcage, right, Vic?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, so we're going to dissect the article a little bit, showing my processes and with the products and tools that I'm going to have on display for you. Anyway, so let me get the clicker here, and we'll get into it here. Smallinger photo. This is Toll on the mountain in 1973, 50 years ago. 50 years ago. We're all getting older, right? No. But what we're doing here is we're trying to keep all these memories alive, right? In models, in Joe's talk, in Vic's presentation, and all the other great presentations from. And I'm starting to sound like my father. The way he talked about the damn diesels. Now I'm talking about the damn Gevos, right? Anyway, well, let's dissect this photo. It is a perfect example of what I wanted to model. And I found this photo after I found my first photo, which is the photo Bob photo of 8800. But look at the low light photography here by Steve. You see a lot. Let's take it apart a little bit. You see that the helper set has been sanding probably a long time. Probably used this helper set a few times over the mountain. I don't know. But you can see that nice white sanding dust patina on the running board. You can see, if you look at the number boards of that first SD40, you can see how the tunnel soot has accumulated up there on the number boards and on the top of the locomotive. And you can see the second locomotive, which is the 45. You can see the back of the locomotive with the soot that's been accumulated in the back. So as these things went through the tunnels, what happened was the soot would collect on the front and back of the locomotives, right? It's pretty obvious what was going on in my eyes. All right, so the sanding dust was kicked up everywhere. So if you look at photos of locomotives in that era, you would see the sanding dust not only on the running gear, in the trucks and fuel tank, but you would see it on the walkways, in the corners of the nose, and even on top. And that's where Signer got me some really good shots of the top of 8837, which motivated me to, well, actually he told me to do the article. He said, you can do this, I need to fill pages, is what he told me. So anyway, so this is Run 8 weathering, and I really like this photo by Steve because it really enhances with the low level light that he took this at, of what the patina for 1970s locomotive should look like on your model railroad. So let's go ahead and move. So this is what scale trains give you. All right? It's the first ST45 that SP bought, right? And to me, I look at that and I see a Lionel model, right? It's just too clean. It's too perfect. And then you look, let's go back. All right? You see the difference? Okay. Just a little, right? So 8800, here's the first ST45. Let's go and see what it looked like in the photo Bob era. That's what 8800 looked like in my eyes, okay? This is probably right after Amtrak. You see the mixed Amtrak train passing it. This is just east of Colfax. There are trains coming off Long Ravine. The Amtrak train's about to go on to Long Ravine. But look at that patina. Isn't that wonderful? So you see what's going on there? You've got, let's take this one apart a little bit. So you've got that sanding dust all over the running boards, all over the top of the fuel tank. You can see a little bit on the nose by the windshield there. But what else do you see? I'm pointing this stuff out so you guys see this when you do your model, right? So the exhaust, but look at the air intakes on the radiator, on the back, and on the air intakes for the behind the cab there. Where it's all the sanding dust is accumulated there, right? Yeah. Anyway, so with all that said, I tried to weather 8800 as we saw, and this is what I came up with. I came up with, this is the first locomotive I did with running weathering, and we're going to talk about what I used to do this, but I tried to match photo Bob's photo. And you can see the mixture of the soot in the sanding dust, as long as the discoloration above the Southern Pacific on the car body. And from what I understand as a mechanic, the exhaust manifolds are right there below the dynamic brake, and the heat from the exhaust manifold discolored the car body paint there, the gray paint. So you would get almost like a carbonizing of the paint. And at some locomotives, it even took the Scotch Light Southern Pacific off. But I tried to match that as well. So this is my first attempt, and we're going to go into my process and how I did this. The second attempt was 8819. This is kind of along the same lines. It's not as sanding coated as the 8800 was, so I modeled it kind of like this photo. And that's what the big thing with weathering is. If you have a photo, you're golden, right? Because if this is your era, this is a photo from your era. Hey, this is what I want the locomotive to look like. You try to match it, right? So I try to match this, and this is what this came out like. So if you go back, I'm going to point out a few things. This is the one that caught Signer's. I posted this on Train Orders, and he really liked this photo. So he said, hey, why don't you do an article? I said, I don't do articles. All right. So I typed up on Train Orders a little blurb about how I did the modeling. It says, you wrote half the article, do an article, okay. So let's go back and forth here. I'm going to point out a few things. So if you look at the back behind the radiator intakes there, you see there's white as well as black. I kind of blend the soot, the pastel soot in with the sanding dust, which is the sanding dust I use is a raw umber tint is what it's called. We'll go through that a little bit later. But if you look at that area, you look at, we'll go back and forth. Let me see if I can back up here. So you see how you get the black below the radiator, you get the black in the lighter colors. I try to give that effect as well as the effect of the burning of the exhaust, the heat from the exhaust burning the southern, a bit above the southern there. So anyway, so it's modeling what you see, right? And trying. Anyway, let's get into what I use, okay? So this airbrush, I bought this in high school. It's a Pache Model H. It's probably the easiest airbrush you can possibly use. It's an external mix, easy to clean. I've had it since high school. When I bought this airbrush, I bought it, I forget it, Franciscan Hobbies or somewhere. And I used a spare tire for my 65 Dodge Coronet as an air compressor. Hey, it's in high school, right? I didn't even know if I was working, right? So The bad thing about it was, if I ever got a flat tire, I'd be out of luck, right? So I pumped the tire up to like 80 pounds and no regulator. And I'd take it in the garage and I'd paint my wide body Athearn locomotives that we all remember if you were around, in the 70s like I was. So my first 8800, I should have brought that. That was a wide body Athearn SD45 that I detailed. But anyway, airbrush, an essential tool. Come on. A lot of guys, I was talking to Phil here, you can use Tamiya dull coat, but dull coat is the primer. That's what I have there. Dull coat is the primer for your weathering. Everything has got to be dull coated first. Let me repeat that because that's really important, okay? Anything you weather, you have to dull coat it. It not only takes that Lionel train look away, right? It puts that tooth or that bite, right, for your weathering products to go down. So there's a few things I'm going to recommend. So if you don't have an airbrush, you can go on eBay and get one of those Model H's for probably 20 bucks. I bought one for a friend that had an internal mix that was always jamming up, and he loves the external Model H, and I don't know if he's here or not, but I'm not going to say his name. Anyway, so I'm cheap, so the tester's dull coat, I dilute it 50-50 with just hardware store thinner, right? And that you can dilute it a little more, but 50-50 is what I mix it to, and that's a good way to start. There's a lot of other really good dull coats. I mean, Tamiya makes a good dull coat. There's other uses, but this is what I use, okay?
Regular paint thinner, right? Not lacquer thinner.
Yeah, not lacquer thinner, not paint thinner, lacquer thinner. It's got to be lacquer based, right? Yeah, mix it 50-50, okay? And I'm going to be here. I didn't know if I mentioned this, but after this talk, hopefully I get to, we'll do some questions, and I think David has set up a table in the registration room we're going to go over. I brought oils, I brought some of the stuff, and we could do a hands-on thing if you guys are really interested in seeing some of this stuff, right? So, we're going to have some fun.
You bring your spare tire?
I didn't want to bring the airbrush because I thought the hotel might frown upon the smell of lacquer thinner in the lobby, right? So, no, I brought these shells. I brought a bunch of shells, Rare Club. And I put some products on here we'll talk about. I can pass them around, and then we'll go weather them later after the presentation, if you're interested. Anyway, let's move on. So this is Tamiya paint, and this stuff is a beautiful pigment. And what I do with this stuff, if you've read the article, I mix it with 99% isopropyl alcohol. It's cheap. Did I tell you I was cheap? So, I mean, if you go get some thinner, the Tamiya thinner or whatever, it costs you 10 bucks for one. You go to Amazon, you can get a case for 25 bucks. Case of 99% IPA. You go to Amazon. That's where I got that bottle of IPA. Anyway, so what I use is isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to call it IPA. I'm not talking about beer. That was last night, right, Craig? Where's Craig at?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. So 99% IPA. I mix my white. My white is my fade. That's my UV fade, or to tone down something that might have been baked in the sun. The top of the locomotive, something that's been baked and it's been taken. UV takes away the color of the paint. I can tell you about that firsthand on my Camaro. Anyway, so 5% or 10% paint to 90% alcohol is a really good mix, because what you do with 90% alcohol and 10% paint is you have a real thin mixture, and while you're airbrushing it, you're less likely to overload and make your weathering, or your lettering go completely away. Back in the day, they had, was it Flocal Grime? Has anybody ever used Flocal Grime? Oh my God. Yeah, one pass. Where did my lettering go, right? So with this mixture, you can use the alcohol, and one bottle of Tamiya paint, I don't know, what's $5? You can get a lot of mileage if you mix it with this alcohol, right? Just don't drink the alcohol. But what I have there in the foreground is the base colors for dust would be right there in the middle. To the right of dust is flat black, and then to the right is flat white. And then the two colors on the left, I can't remember what the Tamiya colors, but I mix those two. It's a German brown, I think, and a brown that I mix for a grime, right? To shoot underneath the railroad cars to give them that grime look. Use it on the trucks, right? To give that steel look. It looks a lot better when you paint your trucks on your freight cars and your wheel sets. It's a 5-minute job. I've got a set here I can show you. We'll look at them later. But this is a really good product to use for just basic weathering. So I use the white and the black. The black mixture is soot. So the soot that we saw on those locomotives, I mentioned it in the article. What I did is I would get the shell and I would hold the shell, and as I'm looking at it, because I can't hold the mic away from me, I would shoot nose on for the soot to get it on the number boards, and then on the back, because that's where the soot collected, right? And on the top. And then I would go more around the exhaust stack or the exhaust area with the 90% mixture to get the exhaust feel there. And then this is just the primer before you start with the pastels. Anyway, so this is my mixture for weathering products. For filters, I don't know if you want to call them a filter or just but the 90% mix is really nice. And what I do when I shoot this stuff, I shoot it outside a little bit. I take the shell outside and I look in natural sunlight. So I'm looking at this thing in real light, and you can really see in natural light how much you're laying down on your shell or your locomotive or boxcar or whatever. Okay. Okay. The second thing I want to push. So let's go back. So one thing I want to recommend is the isopropyl alcohol. And if anything you should get is the white, and the flat white, flat black. Okay, those are recommended by me, right?
I have a question with that Tamiya.
Yeah, so what do you want to ask about Tamiya?
Does it adhere well to the Delrin truck, the Delrin plastic?
Good question. So the best thing if you can do a Delrin truck is media blast it.
Okay.
It's really unfortunate, but
You gotta get it etching.
yeah. You know, I've heard of some guys, Delrin is really some guys actually use like automotive primers for their trucks, and that'll stick a little better, right?
I used to
But you know, personally, I don't care. I shoot it on a Delrin truck. My buddy Mark, I don't know, he's over there watching this stuff in the other room. He blasts everything. I don't care. I put it, even on a Delrin truck, I'll put it on there, and I'll seal with dull coat, and I'll go in with pastels over that and do a couple of layers on my trucks, right?
You can also brush alcohol, acetone or lacquer, that'll take that.
Yeah, they'll scrub everything first if you can clean it, yeah, or
That'll take that plastic oil out of it.
yeah, good points. Anyway, moving right along. So that's the stuff I recommend for your filters, you know, getting some dust and grime and UV fade. Okay, oils. All right, Windsor and Newton, been around for 1,000,000 years, right? Every art store in every part of the country is going to have Windsor and Newton Artist oils. So Artist oils are awesome. If you've never tried them, I brought them today. We're going to mess with them later if you guys want to mess with them. I got them here in the box. That Gamsol, that is odorless mineral spirits. Let me tell you something about that stuff. It is odorless, you can't smell it. It'll cut the oils. And that thinner, when you put it on a shell or a locomotive with oils, it will not do anything to the plastic or the paint. So you don't have to dull coat. You should dull coat everything, but if you use a good quality odorless mineral spirits, you're going to be fine and not have to worry about taking away your lettering or having the paint melt away or any crazy stuff like that, right? So this is the other thing I'm going to recommend. The other product there is a German-made oil-based weathering stuff. It's a lot more expensive. I wanted to throw it in there in case you saw this. The military modelers are way ahead of us, guys.
They were very much our,
They're eating our lunch. So if you want to see good weathering, I recommend you going to YouTube and looking at Tank, Plane. Those guys are eating our lunch. So we got to bring it up a notch, right? So that's where I went to look at YouTube and learned a lot from those guys. But I think if you got a couple of tubes of the oils, I can't even see my notes here, but there's burnt umber, burnt sierra, all the basic tones that you have. I'll give you a list if you're interested later. Put them on a piece of cardboard, it sucks the oil out, and then you just use, we'll go about, talk about applying it. So you suck the oil out of this stuff when you apply it on a piece of cardboard, and then you just dab it on your model. and then you work it with a thinner laden brush, right? And you can thin it out in streaks, and we'll demonstrate that later, but I wanted to point this out. This is something you should really try if you haven't. I know Tony Thompson uses it. I know Jason uses a lot of acrylics, and we were talking before, and he said that he's interested in maybe trying it out today, so I don't know if Jason's in the audience today, but anyway, this is really cool stuff. And the best thing about oils is it's forgiving, and it takes time to dry. That's the downside and an upside. The downside is it takes time to dry, but most of us don't want to do a model in a night, right? You do some weathering, you can come back the next day, and you can actually still manipulate it. That's the beauty of oils, right? And it's a really good, rich pigment, and when you dull coat it, it looks digital. So, anyway, artist oils. Instead of going to the expensive military malware oils, are what is it called, Phil? The Butang or whatever. What is that stuff? It's a German brand of weathering oils. Butang. Oh, anyway, just go to the art store, get some super good odorless mineral spirits, and some of the. It's got to be the best pigments are the Winsor & Newton artist oils. Those are the top of the line primo oils. And I think a tube might cost anywhere from $5 or $7. It'll last you a lifetime, right? And you only need 4 colors. We'll talk about the colors later. All right, so moving right along. Tools of the trade. This is pretty slim and easy. Hemostats. My better half is a RN, and I asked her to bring home old hemostats, but they're available. Yeah, after surgery, bring home some bloody instruments, right? No. Clean them before you bring them home. No, anyway, so you can get them at a flea market, swap meet, eBay. Those are really good for holding small pieces, trucks, and what have you. So I use that for painting like the trucks. I've got a little gizmo here I'm going to show you later for holding wheel sets. But the brushes, the micro brushes, those are available in the hobby shop. They charge you way too much. But they're available. The gun guys have small micro brushes too that I would recommend, and those are good for a lot of things. Joanne's, yeah, there you go. I mean, yeah, so you get these little micro brushes a lot of places besides a hobby shop, but those are really good to have. The one thing I didn't mention on the tools of the trade, there's a paintbrush called a grainer brush. Does anybody know what a grainer brush is? I've got one to show you. So what it is, it's basically a paintbrush that has serrated edges on it, and it's super good for doing streaks on your box cars and on your equipment. Maybe even steam locomotive streaking, I'm not a steam weatherer, but I'll show you that too. That's not in here. The number 10 X-Acto blade, I forget who mentioned it just recently, but I use that for scraping away acrylics that I've applied to expose the paint underneath, and it gives that chipping or peeled paint look. So, I'll show you some examples where I did this, but the number 10 X-Acto, everybody's got, with the 11 is the pointed one, right? The 10, I had to write that down so I remember. The number 10 blade is good for taking layers of weathering off to give you certain effects. What else was I going to say about that? For that slide, let's move right along. Okay, here's the weapons of choice for me. A lot of guys don't like pan pastels, and I can tell you why, because I didn't like them at first either. Those are the brushes that are here with me today. I'll show you those brushes. They come with these little sponges. Has anybody got these things? They come with these sponges, and I go, what do I do with these, right? Is this for like finger painting? I've never used those. Those are dry brushes. Citadel, I think are the brand, but they're a good dry brush, and they're all different flavors, and there's some really small ones for some pinpoint application. Those are what you should use to apply the pastels, right? It's a good way to get around corners and tight spots, and even if you're weathering a locomotive with the handrails on, like I did on the models that we just looked at, it's easy to get into little corners with some of those brushes. But the one I use for sanding dust is right at the end of the paintbrushes there on the left. It's the off-white. That's called raw umber tint, and I think there's a picture of it. So the two that you would really want to have for these paint pastels to do granite weathering is raw umber tint, which is right there on the left side. It's kind of the off-white, and then black, which is on the top there. That's your soot, and that's your sanding dust. But the browns and the grays, I mean, those all can be used for putting that patina on the pilot. You know, the locomotives that got a lot of grime on the front of the locomotive at the stairwells. You can use that, or oils, right? You can use either or. But pastels are really good for blending on the car body, like I showed you earlier. Anyway, I got the brushes here. We'll take a look at those. All right, panel line accent color. So I don't know if you guys have seen these before. Some of the other modelers call them taco sauce because obvious reasons. The one I would recommend you dinking around with is the black. The black is pretty cool. They use that for, say, on a locomotive car body. I haven't done it much, but you can apply this stuff so it goes in all the nooks and crannies and low spots where the car body doors are on a locomotive, say. And then that odorless mineral spirits on a Q-tip that doesn't make a lot of lint, you can take the stuff that you don't want off later on the higher spots, okay? We can maybe try that. I've got a few things we can try. I brought the black with me today. So I'm gonna be around all day. I don't want to weather it all day, but you know, if anybody's really interested in seeing this stuff, we can meet after the presentation and look at some of the stuff, feel some of the stuff, do some of the stuff, right? That's what today's all about. That's what our PO meets are all about. Okay, moving right along. More products I don't know if you've ever seen. Got this from the military modelers. The one on the left, Vallejo wash, what that is Cascade tunnel soot in a bottle. So if you buy anything of this Vallejo wash, I'd recommend the black. I think it's called Negro. That black, it's wet on wet, right? So when you there's one of the new Tangent box cars on the display table over there in the vendor room. I basically at that car, I want to talk about that because that's what I used on that car. I shot that car with Delco first. Took me an hour and a half after. The car just came in the mail, right? Delcoated it, took the trucks off, I painted the trucks, toned everything down. But on the car body, I used my black filter, 90% IPA, and the Tamiya black. I toned it down, gave it a little bit of that dark color. Then what I did was Delcoat it again, real light coat of Delcoat, and then I used a Vallejo wash, wet on wet. I got that consistency to a nice diluted blend and laid the car on the side. And what it does, it puddles up and gives you a realistic look. It puddles up around the rivets or the lines and seams, and it really gives you the look that the cars actually have. In my eyes, it does. So you can go take a look at that car a little closer. But the Vallejo wash, the Negro, the black, that is a definite buy at the hobby shop if you got, or you can get it on eBay or whatever. But that's a definite good product. They make other blends. There's a gray and a wash, dirt wash, but the black is the one I recommend for you. I mean, for the less than the price of one of these $50 box cars, you can start weathering and having a lot of fun, because I think it is fun. All right, let's move on. Okay, these are the acrylics. Acrylics are good as well. A lot of guys use acrylics. Jason Hill and I were talking, and he uses the craft store acrylics, which is fine. And his models are gorgeous, right? But these are a little bit stronger pigment, and I think they're actually probably harder to work with. This is another thing. It's water soluble, and it's wet on wet, because if you don't put them on wet, if you don't keep them wet, they'll dry and they'll stain. That's why I steer clear. That's why I recommend starting with some oils, because oils are more forgiving than acrylics. Because acrylics, if you don't have enough water, use a lot of water at first when you try these. Put a lot of water down and keep them moving until you like what you see, and then let them set up. But I've tried these on some of the beacons, and I'll show you an example. This is the stuff that I use with the scraping method to give some of the beacons that worn wood chipping look. But the two on the right, I think it's Hull Red and I forget the other one. But those are really good for wheel faces, right? You get a micro brush, and it's a little bit too bright. I kind of like just the cast iron look. We'll go into the trucks a little bit more later, but These are the acrylics. I'd recommend trying them, maybe a few just to start with. But there's a whole bunch out there. The military modelers use it a lot. They're great for weathering buildings and a lot of other things. But I wanted to show those, and I've used them, not extensively, but I have used them with good success. Just a matter of getting used to how they dry quicker, right? Okay. Does everybody know what this is? How many of you got on the workbench and never used it? You're lucky. You know why? You can't get it anymore. So if you can find it, I mean, it's not for rusting. I don't care about the rust. So when I did my first Run 8 weathering, there was a guy on train orders. I don't know if anybody's here on train orders. See my pictures. He goes by, I don't know who the guy is. He does all this in-depth research on, I think this time what he did was he called it a clear or dead, he did a dull coat shootout is what he called it. He tried all these different dull coats on the same painted surface, like masked off. And he said that the Rustall dead flat, which is the bottle number 3, here's the bottle number 3, which comes in the kit. That's the kit that I got and never used, right? And that's a bottle that I got online. I forget where I got it. I think it was Minuteman Miniatures, and they ran out. I'll tell you the story in a minute. But when you shoot that stuff on, you say, oh my God, this looks horrible. It goes on like water. I shoot it on, atomize it on with that Porsche Model H, and it goes on, it looks like water, but it evaporates. Don't force dry it. It evaporates, and it doesn't change the weathering tones one bit. One bit. I was amazed. So I should have sent that guy a case of beer. I was using dull coat. I used the pastels. It'd go away. Where'd it go? If anybody, that's why people don't like pastels, because you go to seal it, and it goes away. You have to do it in layers, repeated layers and layers to get an effect. This stuff's a game changer. So the story on this is I emailed, the guy on eBay was selling it, and I emailed, and the package says it's from San Francisco, so I don't know who the guy is, but I emailed the guy selling it on eBay. It might have been, he said that the guy stopped producing this Rustall product because he had health issues, right? So I don't know, he wants to produce it again. So if you have some of that stuff on your workbench and never used it, the bottle that's labeled 3, which is the sealer, is something you want to cherish, right? And I want you to try it if you have some weathering, and you'll see that it does not change your weathering. One iota, 8800, the first one that I did, was the first one I tried dead flat on. I weathered it with my pastels and my oils and my tints, and I shot it with the dead flat. It looked horrible. It looked like I sprayed water on it. It literally looked like I sprayed water. It has the consistency of water, but it slowly evaporated. It didn't leave any kind of rings or anything like that. And it was basically the way I weathered it, and it was sealed. Now,
There's a question over here.
okay. Yes?
Does it require, number 3, does it require cutting?
No. Good question. It's thin as water. You don't need a lot of it, but when you shoot it, it goes on and it seals. Now, I don't know how well it's going to seal the work. If you handle the models a lot, like grabbing the fuel tanks, it might wear off, but the 3 locomotives I have over on the table, 8800, 8819, and 8837 from the article, I was running those at the Bakersfield Club on Thursday night. I have not had a problem yet. So, but this stuff is the secret sauce for me. I mean, when I found this stuff, it was like a game changer, right? So, if anybody can do a chemical analysis of this stuff, any chemists in the room? You know, I mean, I'm hoping this guy, I don't know who he is. If somebody knows who it is that does Rustall products, I'm going to send him a nice letter telling him how much I appreciate his product for what I'm doing. But I wanted to mention it because a lot of you are like me that probably have it on the workbench, right? And never used it because you don't want to try rusting some of these $50 boxcars. But if you want to seal some of your weathering and not change it one iota, this is great stuff, right? Anyway, so that's, I think, is this the last thing? Anyway, so this is where it all began. This is where my weathering, so I painted one of my precision scale beat guns, and I asked myself, how am I gonna make this thing look like weathered wood, right? So I started with the pastels. This is one of the first cars, I believe, but it's a good unweathered car, right? So I started with the pastels. I would do 3 at a time in my garage, put on some nice music and either 70s rock and roll or some nice jazz that, you know, so I can forget about my work at PG&E. Anyway, and I would work with the pastels, and like I said, I'd have to do a lot of layers. I'd have to apply the pastels, and the hard thing about these beat guns that are over on the table is you have 2 different materials on this car. You have a steel portion and you have a wood portion. You want to weather the wood because the wood and the steel weather differently, right? So that is where the tediousness of weathering a beat gun. I started with probably the hardest car to possibly ever want to try to weather, right? Sadomasochists, what do they call these people that like punishment? But the results are on the other table. After 4 years of doing these things, I managed to do 67 cars now, I think, and it's a pretty cool train if you've seen it at the Bakersfield. And I only had 47 cars on the train at Bakersfield the other day. So this is kind of what it came out like. This is kind of one of my first processes. So the trucks. Let's talk about the trucks for a minute. I painted the trucks, the boxcar brown or whatever you want to call it, the scale coat. And towards the end, I realized that I was wasting my time painting them the color because most of these cars, after about 2 years of being used, the color of the trucks were dirt. So what do you paint? You just paint dirt, right? Weathered dirt is basically what I ended up painting these things. But I want to talk about the wheel faces. On my cars, I want to tell you what I use because they are these are red caboose or Intermountain cars. Take the trucks that come with those cars and throw them away or practice on them. What I use on my beat racks is the AccuRail Bettendorf truck with the Intermountain 33-inch wheel sets. What I did with the wheel sets, I painted the faces black, and then what I use is like a weathering powder. You guys heard of weathering powder? I applied after they were painted. I applied a little bit of thinner that wasn't going to affect the paint, and then I dropped in some of the powder to give that grimy look. Believe me, as a mechanic, I've seen lots of grimy things. So I wanted, and the wheel faces on these from all the oil leaking, they got really dirty and grimy. So I tried to duplicate that effect, and you can't really see in the light of the model railroad or even the light of the building that we're in now. But if you take it out, this is on my fence rail. I put a piece of scale flex track on my fence post. That's in direct sunlight with my iPhone. So that's the result of my first car. So let's look at some of the other stuff I did.
Question.
Yes.
How did you weather the wood and not the steel?
How did I?
Technique.
Good question. You know what technique I used? A lot of patience. So the small brushes I showed you with the pastels, I weathered the boards and not the steel. So what did I say about sadomasochist? But that's really good jazz and really good rock and roll. To soothe the nerves, right? So one other thing that I want to point out while we're looking at these beat racks, and it's not about beat racks, but this is where I started with my weathering madness. But the Vallejo wash, that black wash I was telling you about, what I would do with that is wet on wet. After I'd seal it with Dull Coat, I'd get that Vallejo wash with like a triple aught brush, and see if it gets better. I go in with that wash and do all the grooves between the wood boards to give it a little bit of distinctiveness, right? You can see that it's a little bit here. Some cars have more than others. It all depends on how much beer I drank before or after dinner. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter, and you know what the gratification is? The gratification for me is, hey, this really looks cool. In my eyes, it looks pretty cool. I take it to the club, and the guys say, yeah, how did you do that? So now I'm telling you, I did it. A lot of patience, a lot of time, right? But it's a hobby, right? If you do one car that looks really cool, spend a lot of time, so be it, right? You did it, right? But the more you do it, the more you get better at it. It's just a matter of doing it. Weathering is just something you have to put the time into it. And I just, after 67 cars, I got pretty good at it. So
That's called stubbornness.
yeah, yeah, stubbornness, right? So this is another. I think this is another precision scale car, a little bit different. I used what does it say there? Yeah, I used weathering pencils. Anybody ever mess with weathering pencils? You can see some of the pencil lines where I penciled the gray in there with pastels, and then you can see that that Vallejo wash in between the boards, and of course staying away from the steel so the steel doesn't look like it's wood, right? That's a lot of work, but you know what? You get good at it. After you do 2 and 3 and 4, it comes automatic. Believe me.
I've used those pencils and they get dull and you can't get up to the edge of the steel.
It's called sharpener. Hello. You want to? I love questions like that. Easy questions. Anyway, so one of the things I noticed on the SP beat gongs is the shippers, Holly Sugar, Union Sugar, they would always staple I don't know what they staple. I was talking to Jason about this. They had always stapled the Holly Sugar and maybe the car number or the weight of the car right there below the car number, so it would obliterate the capacity. So they started moving them down on the sill, just so you know. That's why I kind of weather that area a little more gray. But the inside of the car, I would just shoot. Inside, I would just shoot like a concrete gray, and then go in with pastels to give it that brownish gray faded wood look. Because I knew I was going to load these things. I wanted loaded cars, 4 ounces, NMRA standard, and that's why I can back them up uphill through a switch. Anyway, all right. So here's another one. That's this one I took pictures of. I did more layers. You can see the top one is less weathered, and the bottom one's got more of that Vallejo wash, and you can see how much darker it's gotten. So anyway, this is how I started. Layer after layer, not knowing about that Rustall dead flat. And I don't know if the dead flat, with all the handling, I don't know if the dead flat's going to seal it enough where it's going to take the handling, but this was my process on the bead racks. Okay, so this is the one where this is the one I use acrylics on, right? Some of the gray acrylics and that number 10 blade. You see on the boards there, right, there's a second or third panel where you can see kind of what it looked like. The paint is more evident. You can see the gray. That's kind of a cool chipping effect, right? And this is a car that I built, custom built, the third extension. I did I think a talk at BAPL about beat racks, but this is the extension that I had custom made. I did, I think, 18 or 19 cars with a custom extension. I got a little story at the end. I got somebody that interested in beats, and I'll tell you that story. But that's the custom extension that nobody's doing. I'm hoping to get that 3D printed by a friend. Joe Diamato has a pilot car. I'll show you that car. And he's the one up at Microtrains in Oregon, the N-scale guys. They've got that beat load that is to end all beat loads. I wish he would have done that resin beat load 10 years ago, right, before I put all those beats in my cars, because I think that resin beat load, which is it's in the display area, and those are the best. That's the best beat load. So anyway, how am I doing on time? Anybody else? Because I'm Italian and I talk a lot, right? All right. So Detail Associates wood car. This is a car that was given to me by a good friend of mine, an excellent modeler. He's one of the only guys that could build 40 of these Detail Associate cars. Most people don't even build one. Right? So I can relate to his madness, because anybody that can build 40 of these things. You build 40? Oh my God. You can weather like this then too, no problem. Anyway, so he was kind of perplexed on how to weather. So what I did is I just shot it. I shot it with gloss coat first, and I shot my scale coat boxcar. It doesn't really matter what color brown you use because it just changes so much after the weathering. So this is one of the detail associate card, sealed with gloss, and you can see how I painted the inside, the gray. And I'll go in and put some brown in there. That's kind of what they look, the grayish brown from all the beats being wobbled around in there. Anyway, so these are the last cars I did. And what I did with these cars was oils. And I just used zinc white. I used zinc white as a first coat between all the steel parts, which is the uprights on the extension and the braces. You can see all the steel parts are left untouched. And I use oils on the wood to start that patina. So this is what it looked like when I started. This is what it looked like when it was done. And what was cool about the wood extensions, you can see on this that I actually cut the boards and made them look like, you can see them on the opposite side, you can see where you can see through them. It's kind of you don't even see that when the train's going by, but you know, it's part of the personal cool factor for yourself. You know, hey, that looks cool, man, let's do that, right?
Is that a brass car?
No, that's a detailed associate car. Yeah, so I started with the whites and I added other oils. This is all done with oils. You can see the patina on the boards, that it was wood, right? So I can, you know, manipulate the wood. And these are cars that were done by Dave Bardwell, good friend of mine he lives in Roseburg, Oregon. A great modeler. He's in a 1-inch scale now. So he's doing an Alco Century 430, SP Century 430 in 1-inch scale, right?
628.
628? Thank you, Vic. Yeah, Vic has had some modeling done by Dave. He's an awesome guy, good friend of mine. He was Craig's best man in his wedding. Right, Craig? Oh!
Right.
Yeah, so Dave, shout out to Dave Barbell, even when it's not here, right? Anyway, so this is one of his cars that I did him a solid, and he really enjoyed seeing it finished, right? Anyway, so this is the car that Joe Diamato has up at Microtrains. I sent him this as a pilot. I said, Joe, 3D print this extension so we can do this extension for our beat gons, right? He hasn't got to that, but what he did, he saw my pain in getting the correct size beats, right? Vic always sees my cars and says, oh, the beats are too big. And they are, but I didn't want to be like the rest of the herd and use aniseeds, right? So what Joe did, he 3D printed an HO scale sugar. Ask John here. He came down to John's with us, right? At Dunsbury. 3D printed shirt. And then what he did is he got the beats and he made a resin mold, and that is the Microtrains HO scale beat load that's in those cars in the vendor room on the display table. I wanted to put those out there yesterday, so a lot of people were asking me about that. But he's got the car up there still. That'll be car number 68 if it ever comes back to me. I think I just put a set of KD trucks on it just to send up there to him. As I'm looking at that car, I see a lot of stuff I got to do. One of the things I do with the paints, the Tamiya paint, and if you go look at my cars on the table over there, it's kind of a sacrilegious thing for a lot of people, but I paint everything. My couplers are painted. But that mix of Tamiya, 90% IPA, not beer, but the alcohol, the paint, if you get that mix that look like steel, you can actually paint your couplers. So you go look at my cars. You know, I didn't like the fact that the couplers did not look like cast steel, right? You know what a coupler looks like? So if you paint those and you have a problem, I test them afterwards, because when you run 40, 67 car B trains with helpers, you want to make sure they're not going to come apart, right? So if you have a problem with them sticking, you just put a little bit of alcohol in them and it'll loosen them up, and I've never had a problem since. But I think the couplers and the patina that you can put on some of these cars, it pays off, and it makes, it's the difference between a real good model and a great model, right? I'm not saying I'm doing great models. This is my process. This is my madness. So anyway. All right. So this is a few other cars that I worked on after the beats. I didn't want to be, as my buddy Mark calls me, a one-trick pony. Right? So I started doing some center flows, and you can see I used oils on these and some pastels. And this is a mid-70s car, so I couldn't grime them up that much, but this is on the workbench. I would give the truck's a nice patina, the wheel face is a good patina. Just some of the other stuff I've been working on. This is just another center flow. You can see how the oils are worked there on the weld beads. You see the cars that when they get dirty, they start collecting dirt at the seams there, right? So I try to, this is just a little bit of weathering, right? But it makes the car look good, especially, after you dull coat it and you put it on the railroad, it looks a lot better than just one out of the box. Another one, you can see the painted trucks that have been weathered down. I grind the bottom, paint the couplers, put a few decals on it. But just some of the other cars I've done. Evergreen car, this is my era, right? These ran in everywhere in the 70s, and I did a few of these. These are the Athearn Genesis cars. Just a few. Some of these cars that are over there. I've got more cars that aren't on the table, but some things to take away is, the wood placards on the side, I kind of make those look like weathered wood a little bit, so I tone them down. But look at the couplers, they're painted. The top of the hydro cushion, the extension on the coupler is painted, so it gives the car that it gives it the weathered look. It looks like it's out there on the railroad, right? This is a Wheels of Time car that I dinked around with. This is the start before they were totally blown away. The bulkhead flats on the SP ended up with not having bulkheads. All they had was, but I try to give that patina of what I did on the end of I sanded it with some 600 and got my X-Acto knife and ate the boards up. Just another thing that makes it a better model. But there's my wash again. I use pastels and oils and washes on the decks. That's a little dark, but if you've seen the cars later on, the deck just turned black, right? Does anybody remember that besides me in the 70s, right? Anyway. Okay. Lionel, right? I want you guys to think when you see the tangent ad, Lionel, there is this car, not this particular car, on the display table. I put this car out that I weathered just real easy to make it look more like this. And I didn't go this heavy, right? But this is trips through the Cascades. The SP had tunnels, right? The SP had tunnels and the cars ended up looking like this. So you can go, but the filter, that to me a paint filter, you can really get close. And then what I do is on the rods, on the doors there, you can get a Q-tip, a little bit of alcohol, and clean that up to give it that kind of look. And it's always studying the pictures. The prototype is your for prototype photos are your guide, right? All right, here's the latest. It is so cool they did this car, right? So this is a tangent model photo. This is what they come out of the box looking like a Lionel model, but that's fine because it's a beautiful model. But in their own photos, this is what the car looked like, right? You all saw the ads. You guys probably bought some of these cars at $50 a pop, right? So what's cool about these guys, they actually did an unlettered car that you can get the decals and you can do all this different stuff with these cars. So, but if you look at my car that I got about a week ago, I just want to do a quick weathering job on it to make it look more like this. It's on the table over there, and the reason why I put the two cars out there, so you can go over in the vendor room and see what I did with my car. Actually, my car is a little bit dirtier than this one. But it's all about how much you add to your how much. I think I coated this car with a Vallejo wash twice, and I probably should have only did it once. But I can go back and see the white streaks coming down from the roof. You can do a little bit of oils with that, right? Little oils, the washes. It's about having fun and making your models look like the photographs. That's what it's all about, right? Okay, this is Steve Sloan photo. He posted this on Train Orders. I asked him if I could use these, no problem. But this was the inspiration for Mark McLeod model. He challenged me to try to duplicate this locomotive, and I said, okay, game on. So if we look at it really quick, that Steve Sloan took this. This is right one of the last Black Widow Cadillacs. Thank God Joe started with Cadillacs this morning, right? Doesn't get better than a Cadillac. Anyway, so he said, hey, can you do this? I mean, the Southern is completely gone under the dynamic brake grid there. So I said, you can see the fuel tank that looks like it's down to bare steel, or I don't know what the hell caused it to get steel like that. Grime on that sucker. So I took on the challenge and I did this for Mark. So this is how it came out. It's over on the table. This is under full sunlight. I try to match the fuel tank and the Southern being totally obliterated. So anyway, this is another one of the models that I used pastels on, and I think I used just silver paint diluted I think it was acrylic paint to give that all the way down the steel look on the southern area where it just kind of came off. Anyway, so let's talk about trucks. Hey, if anything you do to the remodels, you got to take the trucks off and check the gauges. It's one screw, right? So this is a photo Bob, my neighbor in Dunsmere. God bless Photo Bob for taking all these photos of a beat-on truck in Dunsmere yard. Friction bearing, okay, so you can see that caked grease I talk about on the wheel face, and it's a black and white photo, but I can definitely attest that a beat-on truck color is, the truck color is definitely dirt. Because they had the beats dumping all over these things, and just dirt and grime, and they're just, anyway, you can look at the prototype photos and match. So this is what I was using my hemostats for. I was painting my Accurail trucks with just like a grime dirt color and adding a little pastels and then dull coating them. I use dull coat. I didn't use it dead flat on this. I would use dull coat on my trucks because it's really easy and quick. And that's with my trucks. This is Mr. Mossberger's photo. I mean, look at the trucks. This is one from Center Flow, and it's just basically cast iron, or you can use grime. You can actually, but look at the wheel face. It's a rust. You know, paint your wheels, paint your wheel faces, paint your trucks. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that, and a little bit of weathering. Just want to make sure you guys are influenced and maybe trying some of this stuff, right? Anyway, so now we'll go to the magazine article. This is the one I just did, if you've seen it, or lined the birdcage with it, whatever. But John saw 8819, he says, hey, you know, why don't you do an article? Do you have another? I go, yeah, I have 8837. Do you have any shots of 8837? And he came up with those termite photos in the termite collection that are so awesome. He had some great top shots, right? So it's kind of the holy grail. It gives you an idea of what the locomotive looked like. In this case, the fans were all changed out, and I tried to match the fans. But it gives you an idea. You see behind the exhaust stack there, it's not black, it's white, right? So it's not like you have to paint black by the exhaust stack. This is a locomotive that's pretty well worn. Look at another photo. I mean, this is the nose. What I really like about this photo, you got a good shot of the cab by the bell on the horn. You don't have just grime. You have that white sanding powder, right? What's really cool is how the SP employees clean the nose of these things getting into the locomotives. Anybody ever do that with their coveralls, right? But see that one clean spot? You can model that. I don't know if I have any. You go look at the model, you can see what I did is when I put my filter down, I got a Q-tip, one of those real lint-free Q-tips, and I just got it with alcohol on it. And I would take the black filter off that one spot to kind of duplicate that, right? And then the other thing you would see on locomotives, I'm sure you've seen it, is on the grab irons where they would get up and down on the locomotives, they'd clean the soot off a little bit. You can duplicate that too. That's kind of a neat hit that you put your magnifiers on to see, but that's the stuff that I think is cool, right? Did you love it? Think his wife liked that? Came home with, what's this black shit on here? Yes, question.
You mentioned lint-free Q-tip. Is that different from?
Well, no, so good question. So if you go on Amazon or eBay or whatever, the gun guys all have lint-free, small lint-free, so they don't want lint in their while they're cleaning the gun. There's some small pointed, I think they're called lint-free Q-tips that don't have, you know, a Q-tip has got that fuzz on it, right? So it prevents that from happening when you put it on the model. That fuzz might come off. So the lint-free Q-tip is good for taking off that little bit of weather in there. Anyway, moving right along, it'll take all day. So I started with the model. John challenged me and I said, game on, put some Cannon fans on it. The second dynamic brake fan back, I think I used a SD24 fan, but Liz Allen said I should have used just a little button top anyway, but I wanted to match the fans. That's what the shell looked like when I popped the original scale train fans out. This is, actually I'll give Phil some credit for this. I think Phil here in front of me, he uses Post-it notes. It's kind of a quick and easy way to mask off the windows before you dull coat, right? So I took a picture. Yeah, the Post-it note's got the stick up. You can cut it to the right size, right? Cover the windows so they don't fog, right? So I think that might be in the article too. That's probably the photo, but I think that's my original photo. Anyway, so I dull coated it, and this is after I did the white filter, right? So I'm holding the model like this in my holder. This is the holder I use, right? So I'm shooting straight down at the top of the locomotive, right? So this is my airbrush, shooting straight down, right? So you shoot straight down because you want those walkways to be white. You want the roof to be white, the nose to be white, and you don't want to touch the side of the car body as much, right? You keep the car body with more, because it doesn't get the sun. It doesn't get as much UV, right? It doesn't get as much dust. Then after that, I don't think I have a photo of the black. But then I go, I get the shell again. The second part of the procedure is you get the shell again after the white goes down, and you duplicate that tunnel soot that you see on those photos that we just saw, right? You shoot straight on at the locomotive. Don't worry about getting the number boards dirty. You see how dirty they were in those photos? Right? Scale trains lights up the number boards anyway, so you'll almost see them. So you shoot straight on to the number boards, front of the locomotive, the back, and then what you would do, you shoot down on the exhaust ports, a little bit of black, because it got black there, but going back to the photo, you can see you can add the white pastels later, okay? So this is kind of how the whole thing starts. It starts like this. And I don't think I use any oils on this. I mean, you can go crazy. I think I might have used some oils on the pilot, on the snowplow, and the front and back of the locomotive got that grimy dirt look, right? And if you look at locomotives, they didn't get black, but they got that road dirt, which is basically like brown dirt, right? I might have put some on there. So this is after I applied the pastels. So this is the raw umber tint. This is the sanding dust I use, right? I applied, after the black, I applied the black in different areas. You can see I applied the white to areas that if you remember the photos, I can go back if you want. This is kind of what I saw in the photo. And the brown discoloring above the southern, right? The air intake with the white from the sanding dust on it, right? And then I think the air intakes for the radiators might have gotten a little bit too. But if you look close at that photo, it's got the side of the car body, it's got black as well as the white blended. So that's kind of before I probably used the dead flat on it. There, you can't hard see, but you can kind of see where the engineer cleaned the nose on the 8837 with this nice clean white shirt. So that's the shot. You can see the pilot's got a little bit of grime on it, right? But actually, looking at the model now, I probably should have put more black on the number boards. They look too clean now if I look at it here. But you can always go back, right? You can take the model and put it in the spray booth and add more, right? That filtered mix is awesome to add more if you don't have enough. You don't want to put too much because you can't go back, but you always want to, leave yourself a little room to go more, right? Anyway, the running gear, I basically masked it off with some blue tape, shot my white down onto the running gear, straight down at an angle, not at the side, but straight down, because that UV and that dust is settling at the top of that fuel tank, as you saw in the photos, tops of the trucks. But I think before I did that, I weathered the fuel tank with some oils, let it sit for a day, and then I shot the white. I can't remember which I did, it's been a while now. Plus last night was a long time ago. And that's kind of what, this is on the rollers, I was breaking it in. This is kind of what the chassis, you can see the factory gray compared to what the patina I laid down. You can see the fuel tank, it's got the oil mixture on it there. It gives you that dirt with sanding dust look. And that's it. Ready for service. Ready to go out there in the mountain. But it's got the patina like it's already been on the mountain for a few years, right? Anyway, so then it was on to the SD9s. Those are finished now. They're in the other room. I brought those. One of them is on Andrew's rail idling out there, which is kind of cool. It's got the scale sound system, dual speakers in it. I kind of put a patina. This was done with mostly oil. See the cap, top of the caps? It's got a little bit of brown. There's the shield, that I call it a shield. Joe called it an umbrella, that the SP put on the SD9s to protect the electrical cabinet, from what I understand. The mechanical department was getting water in the electrical cabinet, and that's what they put that shield when they went through the grip program. But yeah, those are done now, and that's it. So we're gonna go have some more fun later on, but I have a YouTube channel. It's called Track N with the letter N and time, and you can see some of the models that I'm running. I ran down at La Mesa, at the Crockett Club. Where else did I run? La Mesa, Crockett Club. Got some really good videos at La Mesa, but just, cool videos of reproducing the models or the trains we saw in the 70s. That's what it's all about. So I don't know what time it is. I've got stuff here. We can, David Kosaka said we can break out, and I've got the oils here. I've got some of the pastels. You guys want to do hands-on? You want to get inspired? I'm your influencer. I'm your weathering influencer today. Full immersion, okay? Anyway, so we can break out to wherever David says we can break out, and we can tinker around with some weathering. We won't get it all over the hotel floor, I promise. But I hope you were inspired by maybe to try something. That's the goal. Hey, I see Don DeLay back there. I'm glad you made it. Inspired on doing some of your weathering and taking some of that patina and putting it on your models, right? Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us, right?